hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, especially from where you're hearing my voice from. This is the Biafra Golden Child, and of course, I'm happy to come your way again. Yes, we're happy to talk Biafra, to remind us of the Biafran spirit, remind us of the Biafran ideal, and to talk about the goals, hopes, and aspirations of Biafra. Yeah, I'm happy to come your way again, and I'm super glad we can interact today. Yeah, it's been a while. Yes, this is the last Friday. This is the last Friday of the month of, uh, June, and of course, we're looking forward to the next 2 days. By the time this month of June will expire, and we'll walk into the glorious month of July. Let me wish those who are born in June, a happy birthday or belated birthday. Let me wish equally those who are born in July, happy birthdays and happy anniversaries in advance. Good to know you're listening to us. Good to know you're interested in the viewership and listenership of Biafra Superstars Media. We are out, to give you a blow-by-blow account of what happens in the United States of Biafra. We're always out and happy when we give you breaking news, telling you about, you know, what is happening. And of course, our mantra, we call a spade, not an agricultural instrument. Yes, that's how it is, that's what we do. So ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome, let's reason together. Yeah, this audio today is a brief commentary, going to be brief really, about what has happened since the 47th President of America, Donald Trump, has put his weight behind Mazen Nnamdi Kanu's trial. Yes, in case you don't remember, but I guess I did say it in one of my last audios. I said the 47th President of the United States, Mr. Donald Trump, did send observers. Yes, he did send observers to the last trial of Mazen Nnamdi Kanu. He wanted them to, be a participant observer, witness what happens, hear it, and hear from the horse's mouth. He wanted them to see for themselves and, let him know how the trial is going. He wanted to know, of course, if basic, fundamental human rights and normal traditions, of rule of law are observed. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, we did tell you in Biafra Superstars Media, and I, as Biafra Golden Child, I didn't tell you that the observers came, listened, and went back to the Mr. Donald Trump. And of course, Mr. Donald Trump did, tell Nigerian government to be very brisk, to be very quick, and to, in fact, as a matter of urgency, release Mazen Nnamdi Kanu unconditionally. He said, of course, that he wonders why this kangaroo justice is taking place. I mean, for crying out loud, why would a man who, is talking about the plight of his people, who is letting the whole world know that his people are subjugated, living, in poverty and lack, and of course that his people suffer, so many taxations, multiple taxations. His people suffer and are treated as second fiddles. Of course, that a man who is protesting about his people, a human rights leader, and somebody who is talking about his plight of his people can never be described as a terrorist. That does not happen. Of course, he gave them examples of, people who came out and talked about the plight of their people in the United States of America. Yes, he mentioned people like late Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who was a civil rights activist. He mentioned a whole lot of people. And of course, he wondered why Tinubu, who, claims to be a product of a democratically elected election, should be allowing himself be used for such decadent, wicked, inglorious, and very nefarious, activity. He wondered why, the government describes and continues to describe, IPOB and Biafra as a terrorist, group or people. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think in tandem with what Mr. Donald Trump has told the Nigerian government, and of course, because he has blown the whistle worldwide, the list in our eyes on Nigeria. We are watching, taking a very special look in Nigeria, especially because of the high rate of, abuse of fundamental rights and principles. Of course, because of the security that abounds in the land. Of course, again, because of the daily, shedding of blood, where lives have been deleted almost on a per minute, per second basis. Of course, he condemned the Fulani herdsmen who dress in, sheep's clothing, claiming to be herdsmen, but of course they are moving around with explosive materials, bomb-making explosive materials, and of course AK-47 rifles and even more dangerous weapons. So he said Nigerian government should sit up, and that the whole world is watching. And of course, because of this, the European government equally has stood up to say, look, Nigeria, we're shocked. You guys say you're celebrating independence, you're marking Independence Day, you're talking back to back that you have had elections, democratically elected leadership democratically. But what do we find? We find a lot of, abuse of power, abuse of privilege, corruption to high heavens, and of course, hashtag, clueless government. So, of course, this is trending all over the world. But today's audio will be talking about the one that is happening on the African continent. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, fellow freedom lovers, you all recall that, a Kenyan, in Kenya rather, was where our Muslim leader was, abducted and forcefully renditioned to Nigeria. Of course, a high court in Kenya, in tandem with what Donald Trump has issued and the ultimatum he has given to Nigerians, the high court has, concluded its sitting in Kenya. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're not aware, let me tell you here, let it be a breaking news. I want it to be a breaking news in the Biafra Superstars media. And I, as the Biafra golden child, I'm happy to tell you that good things are happening. Yes, good things are happening around our Muslim leader. In the first instance, ladies and gentlemen, put your ears down. Give me your ears. In the first instance, a high court in Nairobi, Kenya, has declared the 2021 abduction and forced rendition of Nnamdi Kanu, leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, as illegal and unconstitutional. In a landmark judgment delivered by Justice E.C. Mwita, on Friday, the court ruled that the actions of both the Kenyan and Nigerian governments violated Kanu's fundamental human rights as enshrined in their respective national constitutions. Yes, Justice Mwita condemned the arrest, detention, and subsequent transfer of Kanu to Nigeria without due legal process, describing it as a gross breach of international and domestic human rights standards. Yes, as part of the ruling, the court ordered the Kenyan government to pay Nnamdi Kanu 10 million Kenyan shillings. That's approximately 120 million in compensatory damages for its role in the legal operations. The decision marks a significant legal victory for Kanu, whose arrest and rendition from Kenya to Nigeria in June 2021 sparked international criticisms and human rights concerns. Justice E.C. Nweta said, having considered the pleadings and arguments by parties, the decision relied on, the Constitution and the law. I come to the following conclusions. First, the government of Kenya violated the Constitution and Mr. Nnamdi Kanu's rights and fundamental freedoms. Having entered Kenya lawfully, he was subject to the protection offered by the Constitution of Kenya 2010, and the government of Kenya had an obligation to uphold and protect his rights and fundamental freedoms. The justice went on. Mr. Nnamdi was, however, abducted, kept in solitude, confinement, tortured, and denied food and medication, a breach of basic rights. He was chained, humiliated, ridiculed, and held in contempt, and later forcibly removed from Kenya. without following the law in violation of his rights and fundamental freedom for which the government of Kenya is liable. Based on the above conclusions, the court makes the following declarations and orders it considers appropriate. A declaration is hereby issued that the abduction of Mr. Nwanne Kenyi Nnamdi Kanu Kanu, holding him in incommunicado confinement, torturing him, and denying him food, water, medication, and other basic necessities was a violation of his rights and fundamental freedoms. Further, a declaration is hereby issued that the abduction and subsequent forcible removal of Mr. Nwanne Nnamdi Kanu from Kenya to Nigeria was in violation of the laws of Kenya, his rights and fundamental freedoms, including freedom of movement and security of the person guaranteed by the Constitution of Kenya 2010, and therefore unconstitutional and illegal. An order for compensation is hereby issued, awarding Mr. Nwanne Nnamdi Kanu general damages of Kenya shillings 10,000, which is approximately 120 million naira, against the Attorney General of Kenya on behalf of the government of Kenya for the violation of Mr. Nwanne Nnamdi Kanu's constitutional rights and fundamental freedoms. Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, you can see how it's going. This more and more will be coming up because, of course, the world has listened to Donald Trump. The world has listened, to the 47th president of America, who said, "Listen, justice anywhere." Of course, he was quoting late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said, "Justice anywhere is injustice. Injustice anywhere, rather, is injustice everywhere." And the violation of anyone's, fundamental human rights is the violation of everybody's fundamental human rights. And those who know and refuse to speak equally are aiding and abetting such a fundamental breach of the individual's or a group's fundamental rights. So, ladies and gentlemen, here you have it. I told you it's going to be a brief one. Here we are, our maximum leader, Nnamdi Kanu. He's gaining grounds in Nigeria. Of course, we can see how his case is going. That despite the hooded witnesses, despite the witnesses who came incommunicado, who came, in innuendos, who came hooded up, of course, with their so-called 4 suitcases filled with, boxer shoes, personal effects, which they said are exhibits, and of course, the so-called audios that were cloned with voice. Nnamdi Kanu's voice is cloned, and so many things. Audios that were done, videos that were persons that were manipulated. Of course, we can see the way it's going. Nnamdi Kanu is going to walk away a free man because, of course, he has been very, very innocent. He's not guilty as charged. What he did, talking about the plight of his people, is within his fundamental human rights to protest, to move around, and to talk about the welfare of his people. Yes, of course, we know that the Southeast, the Biafra people, are a legitimate group in Nigeria. But of course, Nigerian government, because of the so-called activities of, Major Kaduna and Zogu, January 1966, which, of course, eventually led to the Civil War, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70. Of course, since then, the Igbos have been treated as an unwanted species to the extent that a pogrom, a genocide, seemed to have been pronounced on them, and over 4 million Biafrans were wiped away, including children, including women, including the defenseless, including the aged, and of course, people who could not have, sick people who could not have access to medicines. Ladies and gentlemen, the Kenyan government, have been told what you did was terrible. What you did to Nnamdi Kanu was inhuman. What you aided the Nigerian government to achieve, arresting, kidnapping, abducting, and renditioning this young man all the way who came into Kenya legally with the necessary, entry visas, and then you subjected him to such an inhuman treatment. tortured him, molested him, chained him, and treated him like an animal. Of course, that is some of the highest level of human wickedness. Yes, and the Kenyan High Court, has declared the 2021 abduction and forced rendition of Nnamdi Kanu, leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, as illegal and unconstitutional. And of course, the judge was very clear and precise when he said, that he condemned the arrest, detention, and subsequent transfer of Kanu to Nigeria without due legal process, describing it as a gross breach of international and domestic human rights standards. Ladies and gentlemen, it didn't end there. As part of the ruling, the court ordered the Kenyan government to pay Kanu 10 million Kenyan shillings, approximately 120 million, in compensatory damages for its role in the illegal operation. Ladies and gentlemen, this decision marks a significant legal victory for Kanu, whose arrest and rendition from Kenya to Nigeria in June 2021 sparked international criticisms and human rights concerns. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a good one. I don't want to bother you more. I want us to wait. We're waiting for the Nigerian government and their so-called trial at Abuja. Yes, the trial of Justice James Omotosho. We want to see if he's going to toe the path of honor. We want to see if he's going to stand justice on the head, or if he's going to bend corners, if he's going to cut corners, or if we want to bury his face and name in shame. But I want to believe Justice James Motosho is going to bury he's going to bury a leaf from Justice Winter all the way in Kenya, who has condemned the arrest, the detention, and subsequent transfer of Kanu to Nigeria without due legal process, describing it as a gross breach of international and domestic human rights. Ladies and gentlemen, Nnamdi Kanu is our leader. Nnamdi Kanu spoke for us. He represents us. And ladies and gentlemen, we should support him vigorously. This is the best time to say you're a Biafran. This is the best time to identify with Biafra. Ladies and gentlemen, the United States of Biafra is up and doing. The United States of Biafra is here to stay. There's no two ways about it. We're not interested in 2027 election. We're not interested who are the governors or senators or leaders of our people politically, because these people have sold us out. These are people who are AGIP, any government in power. These are people who can sell their mothers, yes, their fathers, their uncles, who can sell their people for a mega porridge, a mega, plate of porridge. It's so alarming what our leaders are doing, so-called Igbo leaders, people of Biafran extraction. They have completely become deaf and dumb, and they are dancing naked for APC and for Emilokon. Yes, that's what they're doing. But we thank God for people like our Mazumon leader, Nnamdi Kanu, who, despite it all, despite his royal background, despite his influence and affluence, sacrificed his life because of the Biafran people. We are happy about Simon Ekpa, our able prime minister, who, despite the flourishing career, politics in Finland, despite the fact that he was doing well, a sportsman who won laurel for Nigeria at one point in time, he sacrificed everything and said, look, I will fight for my people. I will stake my life. I will stake my blood for Biafra. Biafra must never die. If they don't want us in Nigeria, then of course they should allow us to go. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what Simon Ekpa stood for. And today he's undergoing trial in Finland under, the surreptitious influences of the Nigerian government. It's a shame, big shame. Ladies and gentlemen, United States of Biafra has come to stay. And of course, we are giving our massive support, complete, unalloyed support to Dr. Ngozi Rabueze, the Deputy Prime Minister and former Chief of Staff. Yes, she's working vigorously, she's working assiduously, and she's going around the clock, all over the world, fighting Biafra, talking Biafra, speaking Biafra, breathing Biafra, and of course, eulogizing Biafra. Yes, because of our vigorous efforts, because of our unrelenting activities, Biafra continues to remain, in the map of the world. Biafra has continued to maintain a very feverish tempo. Biafra is in the minds of everybody, including the 47th President of the United States of America, Mr. Donald Trump. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to tell you, Kenya is in it, and it's going to cost them something. You violated a man's fundamental human rights. You sold him out. A man who ran to you, came into your country, legally, legally with the necessary requirement, entry visas and necessary requirement, but you sold them out. What did Nigeria give to Kenya? How were they bribed to sell us as a gentleman? It's very unfortunate. We can imagine the extent to which this government can go. This government, especially the comatose, moribund government of PMB, that had nothing to do for this country except put us in hardship and difficulty. Yes, this was a government of PMB after 8 years. What it midwifed for the Nigerian people in February 2023. What it midwifed is a man who said a Milokon, a clueless, unprepared, totally unpalatable government that has subjected its people, citizens, to poverty and lack. Back to back, people are hungry. Back to back, people are being killed and insecure. Back to back, people have lost their jobs. Children have left school because they can't pay. And what they are busy doing, the so-called Emilokon, the so-called man who said fuel subsidy is removed. What they're busy doing is buying bulletproof cars, buying private jets, rebuilding mansions, building a governor's house, building a president's house, vice president's lodge. This is all they're doing. Living as though Nigeria is in a very powerful, affluent position. And yet, the majority of the citizens are living in poverty and lack, living in squalor. Meanwhile, squandermanism, corruption in high places are going on a daily basis. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't want anything to spoil my evening. I mean, talking about Nigeria, talking about the zoo puts me in a melancholic mode. I don't know what it does to you, but it saddens my heart to think that we, the Biafrans, are still part and parcel of the zoo. This place that was described by our prolific writer, late Chinua Achebe. He described it as there was a country. There was a country, a very clear indication that indeed the zoo is finished. The zoo has descended to the lowest ebb. Ladies and gentlemen, think Biafra, talk Biafra, support Biafra. We must forge ahead. There's no opportunity for a backward stride. Forward ever, backward never. Let's let it end here. Let's look forward to such happy informations and happy stories, especially amongst our prominent men in Biafra, in the United States of Biafra. Ladies and gentlemen, let's pause it here. I don't know how you're doing, but I guess you're doing well. I don't know how you're feeling, but I guess you're feeling well. Let us be merry, pop your champagnes. Yes, good news have come, and they'll continue to come. This Kenyan condemnation, the High Court condemnation of the arrest of our Mazimon leader, Nnamdi Kanu, is a clear indication of good tidings to come, even in the so-called zoo High Court headed by Justice James Omotosho. Thank you. God bless you. Bye-bye for now.
Yeah, Biafra. Yeah, Superstar Media. Tell me about Biafra. We going back to the motherland. Tell me about Biafra. I wanna know. Tell me about Biafra. We going back to the motherland. Tell me about Biafra. I wanna know. We going back to the land. We going back to the motherland. Biafra. Tell me about Biafra. We going back to the land. Tell me about Biafra. We going back to the motherland. Tell me about Biafra. Tell me about Biafra. We going back to the land.